farm. Do you guys remember that? Right? And what's the basic gist of Animal Farm? What was the basic gist of it? What's that? Some things are more equal than others. What else? What was another theme in Animal Farm? It's been a long time? Okay. So pick it up, read it at some point. But there was this whole conversation around the fact that some things are more equal than others, right? So that's where I'm going with this idea. Now, how many people, are there any folks like myself that eat organic food? Or who can appreciate organic food? Okay, cool. Has anyone ever noticed how expensive free-range chicken is? Right? Yeah, so free-range chicken is sometimes double the price or maybe even triple the price of conventional chicken. Does anybody know why? Okay, so it costs more to have them be free range. And what does that mean, free range? It means that they're not cooped up. It means what else? They're running around in the yard. Maybe. Okay, so no medicine. What else? Less infections, all that kind of stuff, right? So these chickens are running around free. They have access to grass and sunlight. You know, they live in drug-free communities. They have really nice gates, right, around their properties. So they have access. So they might have what we call privileges. We might say that these chickens have privileges.
That one will work, but the other one's got a dead battery.
Okay, so I'll keep it on. And so those free-range chickens are more expensive. They have better community life. You know, they can be more social. They have access to lots of different resources. And then we get to the cage chickens. And the cage chickens, they're pretty inexpensive compared to the free-range chickens. And why is that? Why are they a bit less expensive than those free-range chickens? Because they're crammed and you can cram more into smaller spaces, right? What else? What's that? They're easier to care for.
Yeah, no one has to let them in or out.
Nobody has to let them in or out. What else?
They don't take up any land.
They don't take up as much land as the free-range chickens. What else?
More competition.
There's more competition. You can get them in tighter spaces. There's antibiotics that you can grow them faster, right? Because you can get a full-grown chicken in 46 days as opposed to a natural process that takes a little bit longer. And what is the situation like? What is the environment like for cage chickens? It's horrible, right? It's nasty. It stinks. They're cramped up. There's lots of trash in their yards. There's not a lot of green spaces where they are, and they're pecking each other. So they either have to cut off their beaks or give them chicken glasses so that they don't cannibalize themselves, so they don't commit black-on-black crime. I mean, so that they don't hurt people in their own chicken coop. But here's the funny thing about these privileges. So the free-range chickens have privilege. The cage chickens don't have the same privileges as the free-range chickens. But what's the problem in this metaphor of both the free-range chicken and the cage chicken? They're ultimately going to be served up. And so when we talk about this concept of white privilege, what we sometimes don't forget is that if we're being active in the game, if we use or have these privileges, they're not to benefit us, but they're to benefit the system. And at the end of the day, whether I'm rich or poor, whatever my racial or cultural background is, if I'm not conscious of how I'm behaving, I will still be served up at the end of the day. And so when we talk about this concept of privilege, those are the things that we have to keep in mind, whether it's white privilege or black privilege or whatever. To be quite honest, I have been in situations where my black brothers and sisters will give me something extra that they won't necessarily give a white person. And so that happens among groups. I'm not exactly sure why, but sometimes those are things you just can't refuse, because sometimes the pocket get tight. You're like, ooh, thank you for the extra fries, right? So that's something to think about and consider. And so the other part of that is that so we have those privileges, but on the backside of those privileges is this concept of internalized oppression. And internalized oppression is best summed up in the story of crabs in a bucket. Most folks are familiar with that concept, crabs in a bucket, right? So you put crabs in a bucket and you don't have to put a lid on, because as the crabs are trying to crawl out of the bucket, they pull down crabs that are in front of them. Ultimately, no crab escapes from the bucket is the metaphor of the story that goes along with that. And so when we have internalized oppression, what that means is that what the outside world has said about my ethnic group or about my cultural group or about my gender, not only do I believe it, but I become the standard or the individual who's going to make sure that oppression stands. And so we become hypercritical when we have internalized oppression of other folks. I am not a woman, but I am told that women can be so critical of other women in terms of what they dress, how they look, and blah, 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 when men don't even know the difference. Right? So, a lady will say, well, honey, how do you think? And the guy's like, oh, that's a great color. She's like, I don't like that color. But she's so concerned about what other women will say, because other women will be like, I can't believe she wore it that way. Right? When men, we're just like, oh, that looks nice, So when we're also hypercritical, we have a keen eye for what's wrong with folks, and we lack the grace to give folks to say, you know what? They're not doing it absolutely perfect, and that's okay. When we suffer from internalized oppression, we think people have to be perfect to meet our standards in whatever it is that they're doing. So why is it that the poor hippie folks, why are they not doing exactly this, and this? Because this is what hippies should be doing, blah, 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 blah. And we lack the grace to understand that we're all trying to be the best we can given what we have access to. So context becomes extremely important, and context is everything. So I use this example. In southern Minnesota is where most of the farming happens. And I don't know if you've been close to a farm or know anything about farming, but is there a certain knowledge base that farmers have to be successful? Okay, so what kinds of things do farmers have to be successful?
Weather knowledge.
They have to know about the weather. All right, what else?
About the soil.
They have to know about the soil. They have to know about the market. What else?
Diseases.
They have to know about diseases. They have to know about what?
Workforce.
About their workforce, right? They might have to know a little bit about chemistry, right? So if they're going to use a certain kind of fertilizer, or they need to know the pH balance of the soil. I mean, those are things that they have to know. The market, when to sell, how to sell, how to get it to the grain elevator, when to get it on that grain elevator, how to get it on the train. So it's a pretty, and if they have animals, they have to understand animal husbandry, right? They have to understand some basic veterinary things, and they have to have